All right. Hello, everyone. Uh, Today is Tuesday, October 29th. Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Morgan, and this is a talk I host twice a week to discuss my experiences on the path of soul transcendence. This offering is brought to you by the Movement of Spiritual Inner Awareness, with the encouragement and support of my friend John Morton, who holds the mystical traveler consciousness, which is the spiritual consciousness that allows us to do the work that we're doing here today. If you're new to the call, the format is simple. We're going to start by calling ourselves forward into the light, which is calling our awareness forward into the light of God that's already present. And then we're going to chant three Anai hues. Hu is an ancient name for God, and Anai invokes a quality of empathy and compassion. Then I'm going to play a video clip from my teacher, John Roger. And then I'm going to read a poem by Sung San called Believing in Mind. So with that, Ron Holnick, why don't you call us forward into the light and we'll chant some Anai Hughes.
Thank you, Jeffrey. My honor. Lord God of all creation, we come before you this evening, as always, with love in our hearts. We send that love ahead to this very important week that we are moving into, a national election that we'll be experiencing, and sending the light into that whole, what shall we call it, order of business on this planet and where we all reside. And we are just so grateful. And in our awareness, we send the light ahead to all the candidates who are running. And we just place the entire, let's call it a event, in the light for the highest good. And for this privilege, we give our thanks. So be it.
It is so nice to sit here and look at you. It's probably not so nice on your part because you're seeing backs of heads in my face. But I'm not saying it from your point of view, from mine. That in your way, in your method, in your crazies, whatever they are, you're working towards the same thing everyone else is in this church. You're not working to become a church member. You're saying, you know what this church's business is? Soul transcendence. It's not conversions. It's not getting people from something to something. It's just a here platform. You come in and participate, and you move the platform around as you want to. Now, in this room, we have people that come from, listen, this is strange, atheism. When you have that first enlightening experience, you go, why? You have to say, I don't know about this atheism, so then they go to agnostic. It's like, maybe. And they continue on in that until at such time, and this is strange, God extends an experience to you. How do we get God to extend an experience to you. If I want God to extend an experience to me, what have I got to do to have that? Well, aren't there some requirements? Maybe you're having experiences right now. Maybe. But why don't you know that? It can only be experienced according to the level of our openness to receive all of it. If we surrender, and listen, I'm not using a word, I'm talking about the process. If we just surrender up into Spirit God, let's call it cosmic consciousness if that works for you. Don't bicker words here. Start the energy of transcendence here and keep carrying it with you and with you. And listen, it is a very strange thing. It will take you through places that you'll say, this is on the path to God? I can't believe God would do that to me. God did it to you, all right, by letting you do it to yourself. It's very, very difficult to say, yes, I am this. This is our destiny as human beings here, to be commutators for divine energy, to step it down and to share it. If evil appears, love it. It will disappear. If you're loving all the time, no evil comes around you. You walk enchanted. You walk as though it's magic. The environment settles down and we say, peace, be still. And it is so, because the divinity is like that.
You're muted, Jeffrey.
Thanks, man. Um, this this reading is from Sun San. I'm just reading about him now, but he's one of the Chan masters. So I guess he was an important figure, but I love what he wrote, so I'm going to read it to you. Believing in mind. The great way has no impediments. It does not pick and choose. When you abandon attachment and aversion, you see it plainly. Make a thousandth of an inch distinction, heaven and earth swing apart. If you want it to appear before your eyes, cherish neither for nor against. To compare what you like with what you dislike, that is the disease of the mind. You pass over the hidden meaning. Peace of mind is needlessly troubled. It is round and perfect like vast space, lacks nothing, never overflows. Only because we take and reject do we lose the means to know its suchness. Don't get tangled in outward desire or get caught within yourself. Once you plant deep the longing for peace, confusion leaves of itself. Return to the root and find meaning. Follow sense objects, you lose the goal. Just one instant of inner enlightenment will take you far beyond the emptiness of the world. Selfish attachment forgets all limits. It always leads down evil roads. When you let go of it, things happen of themselves. The substance neither goes nor abides. If the eye does not sleep, all dreams will naturally stop. If the mind does not differentiate, all things are of one suchness. When you fathom the realm of suchness, you instantly forget all selfish desire. Having seen 10,000 things as one, you return to your natural state. Without meditation, consciousness and feeling are hard to grasp. In the realm of suchness, there is neither self nor other. In the one, there is the all. In the all, there is the one. If you know this, you will never worry about being incomplete. If belief and mind are made the same, and there is no division between belief and mind. The road of words comes to an end beyond present and future. There you go. All right, we have somebody has already raised their hand. Hello, is that Heidi? Who is it? It just says
Yeah,
Zoom user.
it's me. It's me.
Hi. Hi,
Hi,
Heidi.
Jeffrey. Hi, honey. Hi, friend.
Hi.
So, I left the baseball game for you. Um, so,
I'm honored.
um, I on over the weekend I went to see an exhibition on Nova, the festival in Israel,
Mhm.
and it really struck me. It was really quite a eye-opening experience, and left me with a great sense of compassion and loving, and also questions about evil. And JR just talked about evil in the clip that you just played. Um, and from what I got from it when he said there is really no evil, I, I, I really don't understand that. I mean, there's a part of me that's so naive that has felt that way and has understood it, but I've experienced evil, and I understand the loyal forces of the opposition and the difference between that and evil and how it serves. But is there really no evil? And what does that really mean when we could see mass what goes on in this world?
Um, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a good one to start the night on.
Okay.
Um, Evil is inherently a subjective judgment and evaluation of what's present. Are we in agreement with that?
Yeah.
So one person's evil is another person's good in certain cases.
Yeah.
That's why you can have two football teams who equally pray to Jesus Christ, and then one wins and thinks that Jesus was on their side, and one loses and thinks that they were abandoned by God, and they were both somehow wrong, you know? Evil to a large extent is simply the emergent function of a system of karma, as in when we start to understand the nature of causality and the way in which the system was set up, we start to understand that things are set up to have a certain result, and things are set up the way that they are. There's uh, a way in which we create and mock up a world that should be and compare it at behaviors that cause harm, like physical damage to others, and we say, oh, that's wrong, or oh, that's right. At the end of the day, if you looked at all the various facets and lifetimes of your expression, all the times that you have been a murderer and a victim, all the times that you've been a general and a pacifist, you start to recognize that there really is no difference. Now, there's a difference in the idiosyncrasies of your life and the choices that you make. I choose not to do physical harm to others if I can avoid it. I choose not to do harm to others if I can avoid it. That's called good housekeeping. Like, don't hurt yourself and don't hurt others, and take care of yourself so you can help take care of others. But in reality, all we're looking at is the expression of karmas and causalities. And it's an interesting thing. I've had moments where the intuition is shown to me where somebody did something to me that you would call evil or wrong. And when you see the totality of the karma involved, you go, how could it have happened any other way? In fact, the likelihood was so remote that it could have happened any other way. And yet, behind all of it is this pervading and overwhelming loving that is God's expression into creation. The mind would create some kind of a dichotomy between evil and, and loving. It would say, this is evil behavior, this is loving behavior, and so on and so forth. Evil, to a large extent, is simply our evaluation or qualitative judgment of an emergent function of a system. It is the output of a system that was set up and that is set up to do exactly what it's doing. I mean, if you look at even what we're seeing today in terms of the hyper nationalism and xenophobia and bigotry that a lot of us don't feel comfortable with, if you look historically, it's inevitable. You underinvest in a certain group of people, you isolate them, you remove any hope or opportunity, and you offer them no way to win. And so they start scapegoating and blaming to maintain the cognitive dissonance of their own sense of value and worth. So you look around the world and you see all these people who feel disenfranchised and undersupported, and the only thing they know how to do is some form of violence. And and that violence may be in the form of voting in a violent person, or that violence might be in the form of an attack, or that violence might be in the form, but it's, in a sense, violence happens individually just as peace happens individually, and there's an inevitability to that causality. And it's a question of whether we choose a path that is transcendent of the system, called loving, called God, called grace. I think it's very interesting. I think a more important distinction that John Roger made in discussing this is law versus grace, because in a sense, that inevitability that I was talking about of the evils in the world are simply a balancing of karmas. This inquisition happens here, this death camp happens here, and somehow the checks are balanced and we can go home, except that we judge it and acquire more karma and then have to go complete that. But in grace, it says, even if it makes no sense, even if we have every reason to hate, we love anyway. And that loving becomes the frequency upon which the Christ rides its expression as the Holy Spirit into this planet. And that can be transformative. And we do not have to be against evil to be for the Holy Spirit. We do not have to fight. We do not have to have againstness in our vocabulary or in our consciousness in order to stand tall in the truth of loving as a natural and authentic action of human existence. The law would say war is inevitable. The law would say cruelty is inevitable. The law would say exploitation is inevitable. And grace says loving is always present, always available, 24 hours a day when we choose it. The truth is, we've been so many people. You've been so many people doing so many things and so many mistakes. You know what violence leads to. You know what all that is. You know what violence is on both sides of the equation. I have compassion less for the violence, the one who does it or the one who receives it. It's the same forgetfulness. I have compassion for the forgetfulness of humanity, that so many people have forgotten that they are God, and they've forgotten that they're worthy of loving in every moment of every day. So in that sense, I choose to make choices and I choose to support physical actions that discourage the violence that is done to people around the world wherever possible. But I don't judge it because the ones who had violence perpetrated on them then use that to justify violence perpetrated on others, and it becomes a cycle of forgetfulness. And if there's a heartbreak or compassion, it's for the forgetfulness that continuously plagues this people, that they think they need to continue to participate in the law when the debt has already been paid and they can be in grace right now. But the challenge that we face as humans often is the karma. If you're born in a certain place, in a certain circumstance, with certain parents and certain socioeconomic, whatever, you read the statistics, any actuary will tell you your life starts to become very predictable. So it becomes even more miraculous when somebody is in a situation that perpetuates and promotes violence, that they choose a path of loving. But you and I have both met people like that. And to be in their presence is one of the greatest privileges. When somebody was presented with a karma that would push them into this cycle of violence and the cycle of the law, and they choose grace, I just get the sense that all the angels in heaven simultaneously sing in harmony at that moment when any one of us choose loving over the perpetuation of the law. But it's not about good and evil. It's about forgetfulness and remembrance. There's an inevitability and there's a need for the karma of the planet to be balanced out the way it needs to be balanced out. And where there's opportunity to intervene, I trust the Spirit will do that in perfect ways and in perfect timing. And that's why we do the intercessory prayer and we give freely of our spiritual energy and our consciousness and all that is constituted within this structure. We give freely for use by the Spirit as it would will for the highest good of all concerned. And I know that there were wars on the planet that were derailed or subverted as a result of a karmic shift brought by masters who have walked, like John Roger. When masters walk on the planet, they can become such powerful commutators of divine energy. They can shift seismically the trajectory of entire countries. And you see evidence of that throughout history. When I look at all of it, somehow I know that the thing that I can do that is most helpful and within my control is to bring peace that surpasses understanding into my own consciousness, to forgive any judgments that I have, and to continuously invite the Spirit and the loving that is present to surround all that I see, all that I perceive in my consciousness. Let my seeing and my perceiving be an act of healing. And any time that we see something with the eyes of unconditional loving, our very gaze becomes healing. So the challenge becomes, how do you maintain that awareness, that consciousness of seeing from the soul with the eyes of soul? And with those eyes of soul, it starts to transmute that which you perceive. And the mind would tell you that that which you're perceiving is that which you're supposed to fix or supposed to solve or supposed to resolve or fill in the blank, right? But when God is seeing through us as us, and we can move the ego out of the way, we can move those structures out of the way and just see with the eyes of spirit, then all of a sudden, the very act of seeing is itself a healing action. And we become the healer that we seek. We become the way, the truth, and the life that we seek. I don't know that your heartbreak for those who suffer helps them as much as you're loving them totally and completely with every fiber of your being inside of you. And if you can remove the data that you might have going about what's right and wrong, you may even be able to help them more in that process. It came in strong. I'm blank now. How you doing? I can't hear you. I still
Yeah.
can't hear you, sir.
I,
Yeah.
I said, I'm good. I'm good. I'm in my loving.
Yeah.
And I'm in my laughter too, of the absurdity of this planet.
Yeah. And I mean, and when you have memory of some of the absurdity you would have participated in at various times, you really get that presence of like, well, I really don't have a right to judge anyone or anything because I've done a lot of this silly stuff.
Yeah.
I certainly can't judge the soldier or the terrorist or any of that stuff. I've done a lot of those things.
Yeah.
I've done the martyr thing. I've done the victim thing. I've done, man,
Yeah.
that's that's why there's always this prayer in my heart. It's like advocating for people the way Jesus did, like, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. Just over and over again. Dear Lord, if it is for the highest good, please make your presence known to them, that they may remember themselves as divine and return to the ocean of love and mercy inside of themselves and beyond.
Amen. Amen.
God bless you.
Love you, Jeffrey.
Love you, Heidi. Hey, Miriam. How you doing?
Hi, Jeffrey. So nice
Hi.
to hear. I really appreciate you. I think of each one of these hours like its own self-contained pearl. I just really appreciate you. I would have a question tonight about I'd like to clear karma around loneliness and aloneness, and anything you can share about that, anything I can clear, I'd be very grateful.
Yeah, I think it's a good distinction, loneliness and aloneness. For me, aloneness has to do with physical proximity, either from a communication media level or physical proximity to other people. Sometimes the aloneness that, or sometimes the loneliness we experience is just we're communicating with people digitally and we don't have enough physical interaction with people, so we're not communicating on all those other nonverbal levels that are needed to signal belonging and relaxation in the body. So I think distinguishing between that physical reality of I'm just not around other people and that sense of loneliness is a very important distinction. To a large extent, the loneliness and around other people, at least in my experience, is subject to simply the ebbs and flows of our karma. Believe it or not, I would very much love to just be meditating in a cave all the time. It's not that I dislike everybody or something like that. It's just that's kind of more my happy place. I like aloneness. It makes me really happy to just be able to do SCs. Now, this particular lifetime has for me a lot of requirements regarding engaging with people. So, so that's there. But the irony is, I can be around a room full of people and feel more lonely than I feel when I'm alone. So I don't necessarily think there's a correlation. And I think that's an important point. The mind will often go, oh, am I being antisocial? Maybe I have a problem because people aren't hanging out with me. But sometimes there's just a karma that you got to fulfill by being alone. And sometimes it's a really important opportunity and window in your spiritual inner awareness to take advantage of additional spiritual exercises. Sometimes it's really a blessing, is what I've seen, where spirit goes, hey, this is a sacred moment for you. This is a time where you need to be with you and no one else. And that can be really, really special. Now, in my experience, loneliness is always a product of an externalization of the loving that I seek. So it's always a process of me trying to seek an experience that I have within me available to me that I've mocked up as requiring some interaction or something that I perceive as outside of myself. In a sense, if we know that all relationships are inside of us, how could we possibly be lonely? We have a giant crowd of people called everyone I've ever met inside of us. And maybe everyone I've ever met in all the lifetimes, who knows? So we have all of that available. I think it was Ram Dass who said that humans, what is it? One of the central problem of humans is they try to solve internal problems externally. He always had a great way of saying things. But what often happens is my loneliness is my forgetting that my presence is enough. It's always going out and thinking that there's a condition for my completeness. And that usually is built upon some strategy or mechanism that my consciousness set up to try and have the experience that I truly want. So usually the experience I truly want is something like oneness or connection with God. So the loneliness seems to go away when I go into spiritual exercises and I go deep into that, or beyond that, you could say. The loneliness will sometimes hit as a kind of a withdrawal symptom or like an aching for that experience that I have when I'm in spiritual exercises, when I'm in soul travel. But oftentimes the loneliness is something that I create in my consciousness in response to the mock-up of how I think I can fulfill the need that I have. What I've been able to do in that process is I'll be in that room full of people where I'll feel extremely lonely, because that's where I feel lonely in parties. Isn't that funny? I don't feel lonely. If I have one person that I can connect with, usually that's enough. That's nice. That's really easy for me. I love that. It's like when I'm surrounded by a room full of conversations, I just kind of go, I don't know what to do. So some people can play that room like a symphony. But what I do is I'll often catch myself in a process of attempting to mock up what I need to feel good or what I need to feel loved or what I need to feel fill in the blank. And then my mind, in response to my feeling of something missing, will mock up the conditions that I need to fulfill to get that, or will explain the feeling of loneliness by rolling back the tape and saying, oh, well, you had that awkward interaction with so and that person didn't understand you and they're so superficial and that's why you feel like that's why you feel an emptiness in there. But you see, the mind is not really our friend because it will often mock up causalities that aren't really there, when all I really needed to do was go inside. The first impulse that we have in loneliness is to look outside. And that's like the foods, the TV, the doom scrolling, the TikTok, that our first inclination, it's like almost automatic, is go outside. But the irony is the immediate solution, the thing that will get us the quickest freedom from the sense of loneliness, is to go inside and connect. Because in truth, what we're thirsty for is that connection. And the most direct connection we have is the connection we experience with our own divine nature, because that's who we are. So, in that sense, loneliness is often a self-inflicted wound. And I'll just say self-inflicted wound, lowercase s, it's an ego-inflicted wound. And when we understand that the way, the truth, and the light that we seek is within, and we can repattern the habitual responses to the triggers that usually cause our mind to mock up why we think we feel X or what we need to do to feel Y, if we can repattern that to go inward, the loneliness usually goes away very quickly. And part of that is also that when we place the attention and pull the attention away from the body and into the spiritual center at the third eye center, just at the top there, when we start to bring it back to that Tisratil and start to pull our attention in and out, you know, we lose the otherness in the equation. It would be interesting to think about a world where you could be lonely when there are no others. What exactly would you be lonely for?
Um, Often I want to have people around, but then when they're around, I regret it. You know?
Yeah, that's the mind. The mind came up with a solution. Oh, you have this feeling, therefore you should have people around. And then they
Yeah.
come around and you go, I didn't want people around.
It's really funny. I mean, but the circumstance, the karma that I grew up with was just having these two parents that I wanted nothing to do with, and no siblings and relatives that were such Orthodox Jews I couldn't relate to, and grandparents that didn't speak English. So I just had this environment of really being, and I early on I developed this whole concept about that I wasn't by myself, but that I was with myself.
Oh, that's really beautiful. I love that.
So that was, that became my operating system. Um, and so there was a sense of like, and I didn't want siblings because my friends who had them were always fighting with them. So that didn't appeal to me at all. But but now it's more like, I'm living in a place that's a relatively new place for me. And um and so I'm wanting to have more people in my life, but then sometimes when I meet them I go, gosh, we're on such different pages that it's just, I don't know. So it's an active conversation inside me to
Yeah,
really around
but
connection, around divine connection, around all of that. It's a beautiful conversation.
that reminds me, there was a poem by Kabir. Um, let me see if I can find it. I could probably remember it otherwise. But it kind of there's a perspective that might help with that a little bit. Um, well, I'm going to say it from memory and probably butcher it, so that's what's going to happen. He said something like, spend enough time with your true self, and you'll never have to leave your home. And if you do, you will find that everywhere is your home.
It's
So I would
beautiful.
say, spend enough time with your true friend, and you'll never have to look for another person. And if you do, you'll find they're already your dearest friend. If you can cultivate a connection with a person first inside of you, and then the outside is what it doesn't really matter. See, I was always trying to think of all the ways that I had to talk to somebody in gymnastics through their BS to try and build intimacy with somebody. And I realized that's just a lot of work and a lot of control. But if I could go inside with them and connect in and clear whatever was in the way so that I could feel totally at one, totally loving, totally communion with them, then it kind of didn't matter what they did. But the most peculiar thing would happen and a lot of people work with me, they just start to change. I don't mean for them to, but I've already worked to where I'm just working with a them that is inside of me that's clear and healed and full and loved. And they just seem to somehow catch up with that. I'm not trying to control them, but I'm just sort of chilling, talking to the person that I know inside of me that I've fully loved, fully let go. And then the person starts to, I don't know, shift. And then all of a sudden, I do see this kind of intimacy and sharing outside of me in terms of the behavior level. But I think the key for me was just shifting that. What's my initial response? Well, the initial response, according to the world, according to the law, according to the negative power, according to all of that, is go outside of you, solve the problem outside of you. But if we can cultivate this, just go within, first meet them inside of you, first clear whatever you're bringing to the table with them inside of you, and then go talk to them. I feel fulfilled. It's like you could have the most superficial conversation and you feel like you just heard I love you a bunch of times. You just talk to the weather. And you could even challenge yourself like I'll do that in line at the bank and just start working it inside of me with the teller or something and then go up and say hi to them and see the connection that happens. We create the barriers to the fulfillment we seek through the conditionality of the mind. But it's all available inside of us. That's what I've found. Everything that we seek in relationship and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. That's helpful.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
See you
God bless.
later. All right. John Michael or Mickle? Can't hear you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. A number of times in the past, I've been involved in a workshop, and I was in a process where I would go inside and visualize the scene that I was engaging in. And a lot of times it was a murky visualization, not a clear visualization. And I just heard recently JR say something about imagination karma. I wonder if you'd comment on the linkage between those.
I don't know. I mean, I don't really comment on what other people say, but I I can comment on how I use imagination both for and against myself. But
Go for it.
all right, cool. I'll just talk about that then. I think that imagination can be an incredible asset and it can also be a hindrance. And it really depends on what we're using it for. I think imagination is a very positive expression of the consciousness when it's used to assume the good and assume the greatest possible. So, like, for example, you wake up from your dream, you don't remember your dream. You could just mock up a dream where you were walking with your spiritual master and having a beautiful experience. Why not? Another positive expression of imagination might be you're going into a new job or something. Why not envision yourself winning or having a really, really easy, graceful experience? It can facilitate the cultivation of positive attitude, which can be a real key in how we walk through our karma. The way that imagination can be a hindrance is when we no longer use it as a tool and start to form belief systems around it. So imagination can be a stepping stone or can be a stumbling block. If imagination is used against us through negative visualization, or if we use imagination to form belief systems where we place conditionality that isn't there, we place limitation that isn't there. That's how is you start to form a religion in there. I think the key is it doesn't really matter in the sense that like, oh my God, is what I'm visualizing in the meditation real or not real? If it works for you, great, you use it and then you let it go just as quickly as you mocked it up. Where people get into trouble that I've seen and what I've experienced is it's really when people create belief systems and get hooked on what they see. Like, oh, I saw a vision of me as Napoleon. And then I start building this whole belief system about how, oh, I'm a reincarnation of Napoleon and I'm clearing all that stuff. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. But is that present and is that serving you? It's like being very careful about not getting attached in the process. Using imagination for the tool it is, not the attachment level that it brings. Does that make sense? So usually
Sure.
it's when the emotion and the ego get involved that we can get into trouble with the imagination. But guess what? It's the emotion and the ego getting involved that get us into trouble with just about everything on this level. So there's nothing inherently wrong or bad about the imagination. It's just how we use it.
Okay, let me give you another shade of that then. In the
Okay.
past, I've had a number of ideas for projects that were never followed up on and never realized. Would there be
Yeah.
any karma around that?
Yeah, it's a really good idea to declare things complete if you're not going to do something on it, because you don't want to have any part of you thinking that you have an incomplete, because that can be a stumbling block later. So I'm really a big fan of declaring completion. Now
Even if
the ego, now the ego is going to say, well, aren't you the type of person who begins what you start? You had this idea for a business. Why didn't you do it? You shouldn't let it go. Put it on the someday maybe pile. You'll handle that at some point. Yeah, you build up this whole, this whole ego position about it to try and justify a narcissistic image of who you think you should be. My perspective is imagination itself is a karma. So it may fulfill that karma for you to imagine a business. It may not be necessary for you to build a business. It may be necessary for you to imagine a business. And so you did. Your belief that you have to go do that physically, that could be a good thing if you have the physical karma to go do that. Or it could be a stumbling block if it is an argument with reality, called you don't have the requisite karma to go do that. So, and by the way, there are people, even in the professional world, that are idea people. They're not execution people. And for people like that, the clearest karmic approach is called declare it complete once the idea is out there, because you're an idea person, you're not an execution person, and that's fine.
Okay, if I don't remember all the specifics, can I just declare a general completion, in other words?
Well, I wouldn't get yourself hung up or judging yourself about incompletes. I would just do the best you can with what you know. And whenever you find an incomplete that you don't intend to complete, just declare it complete.
Okay.
It's like if I said, hey, uh, I know I said don't litter, so can you just find a way to remove all the litter from Los Angeles right now? Probably not. But you could commit to whenever I see a piece of trash, I'm going to pick it up when it's physically practical for me to do that, and I'm going to put it in the trash can. The-
Believe it or not, I've actually been doing that lately.
yeah. So that and that's the whole thing too. It's like people get into this idea. This applies equally to clearing the consciousness. People try to get real ambitious. Oh my God, can I become clear? Can I do this? And all these ego positions about it. For me, the process of finding greater clarity of consciousness is really just whatever comes up, you work with it, you release the blocks, you get to a place where the loving flows freely, and you move on to the next thing. It's interesting. Progress in the human experience is very rarely big bang. Progress is usually the compounding of microscopic steps on a daily basis that result in significant change. And I actually think there's a John Rogers seminar called the Power of Microscopic Steps or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe somebody can find it and post it in the chat. It's a really good seminar. But the point is it's not really a good use of your mental energy to try to envision the problem you think you created in your life and how you're going to solve it all in one go by declaring everything you've ever done. Now you can do that. I mean, why not? I mean, I would wake up every day and say
All
everything before this moment I declare complete. That's a
right.
smart move. Go for it. But
Okay.
that's you may still find more incompletes that have a trigger or have a pull for you, and you go, "Oh, got it. That one's not complete. Okay, I declare that complete," and then you feel the release.
Well, at least I'm starting fresh though.
Sure. I
Okay.
think it's a good idea to just whenever you think about it, just like whenever it's a good idea whenever you think about it to just say light for the highest good.
Okay.
Not because the light isn't already there and not because the light already isn't for the highest good, but because your mind will wander and create a bunch of garbage. And this pulls you back into, no, no, I'm into the highest good of all concerned. That's what I want to do right now.
Okay. That's very good. Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you, John. All right, Aaron.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Hello.
Um, I I'm not sure exactly what to focus on in sharing with you.
Okay.
Um, a lot of things went through my consciousness. Um, so like intentions and different areas that I'd like to have transformations in.
Okay.
Um, so I guess one there's one area that in particular
Okay.
is I I was ordained an MSA in
That's a good decision.
I did it was like in about 2017,
Uh-huh.
and then I didn't continue it after 1 year.
That might also be a good decision.
And but I don't feel like it. I mean, I know it's probably it might have been a good decision at the time, but um
You miss it?
you know when I just there's this memory of being in the peace awareness trainings that I witnessed another minister, an MSA, um, kind of working with somebody else. He would and then the training, and it was just one of the most beautiful things how he was like holding um, holding for that person in the process.
Hmm.
And something about that just it was pretty like a high level of importance or something like that or value.
Got it.
And so that's I mean I see that in myself. So I I see that as a possibility for myself.
Yeah, I mean it's really a question of choice.
Hmm.
I For me, ministry in the movement of spiritual inner awareness is particularly unique because the focus is not at all status. I mean, it's useful to have a card because you can like flash it at the hospital when you're trying to visit somebody late at night and they're not, they have to let you in. I've used that. It works, by the way. It's really convenient. So that part's great, but it's really not about status the way other other organizations, other spiritual practices, to be a minister means you like went through a specific type of training and you have a certain type of status in the community. My experience of being a minister in the movement of spiritual inner awareness is similar to my experience with being on discourses or any other thing. You're plugging into a field of energy. And in this case, it's the energy of the Melchizedek priesthood and the Christ and how it expresses into the world to do service. When we talk about selfless service, my experience of being in the flow of that consciousness is the self when it works, it's the self is actually out of the way and it's God serving. So you talked about seeing that person serving the other person, but I'm sure that they would describe the experience as, oh no, I just got out of the way and God was serving them. Now, the privilege of that is you get to be present with that and experience the flow of that energy. But
That
yeah,
that is what I want to do. What selfless service.
and that's really the name of the game with that's kind of what we're going for with MSI ministry. It's it's a commitment to actively be willing and available to whatever ministry God would have at any given moment. Which ministry might just be chanting your tone and being alone. It might just be chanting and being alone. It might just be silent. It might just be planting light columns in places where people least expect it. It can be any number of things, but it's less about the what and more about the how. Are we doing it from a consciousness of selfless service? And are we doing it with an active intention to participate, plug into, and give way to that energy of the Melchizedek priesthood? So I think people mock up a lot of stuff of what they think ministry is, and they build a lot of rules. I think the only rule is, and not really a rule. It's more like, hey, stay active, stay committed, stay conscious with it, even if that means like my ministry right now is being in stillness and being a place of peace. But it's that you're consciously doing that, because when we start to go unconscious and we start to not listen to those intuitive leads and signals from spirit about where the service it is at any given moment, my experience is the energy can back up on us, and that can be very, very uncomfortable. So if you were not in a place in your life where you were really ready to or felt in alignment with that surrender and submission to that energy field, it was probably a very wise decision for you to hang up your gloves and, hand in your credential for that period of time.
Can you repeat that what you said when you were not in, you were might have been not ready to.
Yeah, if you check in your integrity inside of you that you are not really willing to fully be in that consciousness and commit to holding that as an active focus in your life, it would have been a very wise decision for you to hand in your credential at that point, because it's a terrible feeling for that energy to back up on us. It's a terrible feeling. So, in terms of taking care of yourself, that might have been a very wise decision. And if you've come to a place inside of you right now where you go, oh my God, I just want to plug back into that wonderful consciousness of selfless service and how God expresses light into this world through the service, through that consciousness. Oh my goodness. Then right into the local ministerial board, wherever you are, and say, hey, I'm ready to plug back into the mothership. I'm ready to plug back into the power grid. It's a wonderful feeling. Being plugged into that consciousness of ministry is one of the greatest privileges available, as far as I'm concerned, on the planet Earth. And I'm sure people on this call would agree with me. And there's absolutely no judgment for people who are not into that and not wanting that, because if a person isn't ready or isn't in alignment with the field of energy, it won't be an enjoyable experience for them to be in it. But if you are ready and you're really feeling it inside of you, man, pick up a shovel. There's lots of good work to be done on the planet. We just go out into the world ministering to all, and it's a joy. It's it's a party.
That's inside of me, and I've experienced that at some point. Um,
I think that's wonderful. And by the way, I've met people who are not yet ordained ministers, like they're not officially got a card, but I experienced that same ministerial energy with them. Now I can't explain, I don't know how all that works, but you also don't need permission to be of service, and you don't need a card to be of service, and you don't need a card to be of selfless service. John Roger describes it as the highest consciousness on the planet. So it seems to me, if we're smart, there's really two things that we would focus on in this life: spiritual exercises, chanting tone, sound current, that thing. First of all, that to me is the most important. And then for all this out in the world stuff, the consciousness of selfless service. I mean, if we just had those two things down pat, I mean, come on. Life becomes a real beautiful stream of miracles, doesn't it? But you don't need permission to do that. Let me just be clear. You don't need permission to do that. Being a minister in the movement of spiritual inner awareness, to me, is signing up to be a commutator of that light and that consciousness of the ministry as it expresses into the world. And not everybody wants to do that, which is totally cool, man. And if it's something that calls you in your heart, oh my God, come join the party. I don't know if I answered your question, but you did let me talk about ministry, which I love that topic. So
I, I you did answer that question, and I don't think that's like I think there's a lot more questions.
always, always. And I'm saying what my experience is, and if it resonates for you, if it feels like it's as if it came out of your own mouth in a sense, then that true resonance just means that that truth's inside of you. So if I'm saying things that like if I said something earlier and you were like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I know that. That's right." That's because you already knew it. I'm not teaching you anything. I'm sharing the truth of my experience and you're resonating at the truth of yours. So the answers that you're looking for are probably inside of you.
That's that. Yes, thank you for saying that because that's where I want to go. And
Yeah.
and that was something else that I want to focus on is how to how to go deeper inside of myself.
Yeah. One one key that I've been working with recently that's particularly interesting is I always thought that somehow I had to go somewhere or do something to get it, not even outside of me, but even inside of me. I've got to travel somewhere, I've got to something. Like you talk about going deeper. It's That's how the consciousness mocks up a process of transformation or a process of awakening. But it is indeed just a process of awakening to what's already present. So the thing you're looking for is already there. That's what I'm getting at. That's the one that hit me over the head. The thing that you're looking for inside of you is already there. You're just not fully aware of that. And it's not fully an awakened part of your consciousness, meaning the reference point for your perception isn't there yet. But make no mistake, there's nothing that you can become that you're not already. There's nothing you can achieve that you're not already experiencing fully. So it's less about doing and more about allowing. There's one of my favorite seminars, all time. I guess this is like the DJ. This is the DJ episode. So opening up and allowing God to do for us. Love that seminar. Fantastic seminar. But opening up and allowing God to do for us. Yeah, the more you can let go and allow God to be in you as you doing through you, the more you'll experience what it is you're seeking. And on a practical level, it just becomes how do I clear the attachments, the blocks, the arguments, the disagreements, the againstness in my consciousness? How do I forgive myself? How do I do the things? How do I let go of all the hooks that I put in there that are distracting me from what's already present? So you just do that process.
There, um, I I once and maybe about like a year ago I did a free form writing, and I had a new experience after doing that, like an inner experience.
Yeah, there you
And
go. That would be like an example of clearing out the junk
yeah,
so that you can be present with your fully with your experience.
something has kept me from doing that more frequently. Like
It
I
may
like
not
to,
be time, it may be
uh-huh.
defense it may be any number of stuff, but there's a lot of I don't tend to use the same technique over and over again. I kind of go with what's present energetically at any given moment. I think it's good to have a habit around freeform writing. That's a great way to clear the unconscious. That's a great way to release a lot of stuff. But there's other techniques too. You can just start doing self-forgiveness. You can do meditations that you listen to on thatwhichis's.org. You can, there's a lot of ways to do it. And by the way, just chanting into your third eye center like that and bringing the attention up, that's gonna help you clear and transmute a lot of the mental karma that sometimes gets in the way too. And I think in all of it, and this is kind of what I was getting at, is that law of assumption. So you just come at it from the assumption that you're already the way, the truth, and the light that you seek. And this is a process by which you are becoming more aware of that. So being conscious of how you frame the story of your existence. Be as storyless as possible. But if you're going to have a story, have a story of you being God, you being divine, you being the Christ. And you're becoming more awake to that process, to that expression with each moment of each day. And then one day you may just trip and fall and find you're in the soul realm and that you never left. Yeah, you got enough.
I'm using what you said as an affirmation, just to
Yeah,
saying that to myself right now.
it's a beautiful affirmation. All right, Aaron. I
Thank
know
you, Jeffrey.
there are many questions and
Yeah.
I'm very hungry. And God bless you. Have a
God
wonderful
bless you
night.
too.
All
Thank you.
right, everyone. Love you. The
Bye.
blessings already
I love
are.
you.
Have a good night.